Clara Dawson's water broke at the exact moment her mother-in-law's hand connected with her face. The slap echoed through the marble foyer of the Whitmore estate, and Clara stumbled backward, her pregnant belly throwing off her balance. She caught herself against the ornate console table, gasping, her cheek burning. But it wasn't the slap that made her knees buckle. It was the warm wetness spreading down her legs, pooling on the imported Italian tile beneath her feet. "No," she whispered, eyes wide with horror. "No, no, no. It's too early. I'm only 8 months. I don't care if you're dying," Margaret Whitmore hissed, her perfectly manicured hand still raised. "You will not give birth to your bastard child under my roof." "My baby isn't," Clara's voice cracked. "Daniel is my husband. This is his child. Your grandchild." Margaret's laugh was cold enough to freeze blood. Behind her, Clara could see Daniel standing at the top of the grand staircase, his arm wrapped around her. Vanessa, the woman who'd been sleeping in Clara's bed for the past 3 months while Clara had been banished to the servants' quarters. "Daniel," Clara called out, hating the desperation in her voice. "Please, the baby's coming. I need to get to a hospital." Her husband, the man who'd whispered promises of forever just 10 months ago, turned his face away. "Get her out." Margaret snapped her fingers at the security guard hovering near the door. "Thomas, remove this woman from my property, and make sure she understands she's never to return." "Mrs. Whitmore, she's in labor," Thomas started, his face uncomfortable. "She's a con artist who trapped my son with a pregnancy." Margaret shrieked. "Who knows if that baby is even his? She's probably been spreading her legs all over town." The cramp that seized Clara's abdomen at that moment was so intense she collapsed to her knees, crying out. Her hands instinctively went to her belly, protective, terrified. "Please," she sobbed. "Please, I have nowhere to go. My parents are dead. I have no money. You took my bank cards, my phone, everything. That's what gold diggers deserve." Vanessa's sugary voice floated down from the staircase. She was wearing Clara's silk robe. "Danny, darling, this is taking forever. Can't they just throw her out already?" "Danny." She called him Danny. Clara had called him that once on their wedding night. He told her it was special. Their name. Another contraction ripped through her, and this time she screamed. Thomas moved forward, his face pained. "Ma'am, I can't just— You're fired if you don't," Margaret said simply. The security guard's jaw tightened. Then, with an apologetic look, he reached down and hauled Clara to her feet. She was still bent over in pain, her worn maternity dress, the only one they'd left her after taking all the clothes Daniel had bought her, soaked and clinging to her legs. "Walk," Thomas muttered. "I'll walk you to the gate." "I'm sorry." Clara couldn't walk, could barely stand. But Thomas's grip on her arm was firm, propelling her toward the front door. She looked back once more, desperately searching Daniel's face for any sign of the man she'd fallen in love with. He was kissing Vanessa's neck, deliberately not looking. The October rain hit Clara like 1,000 frozen needles the moment she crossed the threshold. The heavy door slammed behind her with a finality that shattered something deep in her chest. Thomas walked her to the estate's iron gates in silence, his umbrella held over her head. When they reached the street, he pressed something in her palm. "It's all I have on me," he whispered. $23. There's a bus stop 4 blocks east. I'm sorry. I have 3 kids. I can't lose this job." Then he was gone, back through the gates that clanged shut with electronic precision, leaving Clara standing in the rain with $23 in contractions coming every 8 minutes. She walked because she had no other choice. 4 blocks felt like 4 miles. The contractions were intensifying, and she had to stop every few minutes, bracing herself against light poles, mailboxes, anything solid. The residential streets were empty. Wealthy people didn't walk in the rain, and certainly didn't look out their windows to help desperate pregnant women stumbling through puddles. By the time she reached the bus stop, Clara was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. The small shelter had a broken roof panel, rain pouring through in steady streams. The bench was cracked and listing to one side. She collapsed onto it anyway, her body shaking violently. From cold, from fear, from the contractions that were now coming every 5 minutes. "My baby is going to be born here," she thought, hysteria rising in her throat. "On a broken bench at a bus stop. And we're both going to die." She pressed her face into her hands and wept. That's when her foot kicked something solid beneath the bench. Clara froze. Slowly, she bent forward, as much as her swollen belly would allow, and peered into the shadows under the seat. A black leather bag. Large. Expensive-looking. Completely out of place in this forgotten corner of the city. With trembling hands, Clara reached for it and pulled it into her lap. It was heavy. Surprisingly heavy. Her fingers found the zipper. "Please," she prayed to whoever might be listening. "Please let there be something inside that can help me." She opened the bag and forgot how to breathe. Money. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills, bound with paper bands. More money than Clara had ever seen in her entire life. The bag was filled with it, packed so tightly she could barely see the bottom. Her hand shook as she pulled out one stack. The band read, $10,000. She looked into the bag again, tried to count. 10 stacks across. Maybe 15 deep. Possibly more underneath. A contraction seized her, and she doubled over, gasping, clutching the money to her chest like a lifeline. When the pain subsided, Clara looked up and down the empty street, her heart hammering against her ribs. No one. Nothing but rain and distant streetlights, and the sound of her own ragged breathing. She looked down at the fortune in her lap, at the impossible, miraculous, dangerous fortune someone had left under a broken bus stop bench. And then she heard the sirens. If you're already on the edge of your seat wondering what Clara will do next, imagine what's coming in the rest of this story. Hit that subscribe button now, because this is just the beginning and you won't want to miss a single twist. Drop a comment and tell me, would you take the money? Clara had been a fool for love. That's what her best friend Sophie had told her the day she announced her engagement to Daniel Whitmore. Sophie Chun, her roommate from nursing school, the only person who'd stood beside her at her parents' funeral, had looked at the massive diamond on Clara's finger and said, "You've known him 3 months. 3 months, Clara. This is insane." But Clara hadn't listened, because Daniel had been everything she'd ever dreamed of during those long, lonely years caring for her dying mother. He'd been charming and attentive and so devastatingly handsome that when he smiled at her across the hospital cafeteria where they'd first met, she'd forgotten how to form complete sentences. "I'm a project manager for Whitmore Development," he told her on their first date, and Clara had nodded like she understood what that meant, too dazzled by his attention to care that she had no idea his family owned half the commercial real estate in the city. She should have seen the signs. Should have questioned why he'd rushed the wedding. Should have wondered why his family had been so cold during the ceremony. Why his mother had looked at Clara's simple dress from Macy's like it was made of garbage bags. But she'd been alone for so long. Her father had died when she was 19. Her mother's cancer had taken 6 years to finally claim her. 6 years of Clara working double shifts at the diner to pay for treatments that insurance wouldn't cover, watching the woman who'd raised her waste away to nothing. When her mother finally passed, Clara had been 25 years old with $17,000 of medical debt, no family, and a heart so starved for love that she'd mistaken Daniel's infatuation for something real. The contractions were coming every 3 minutes now. Clara gripped the bag of money, her vision blurring with pain and rain. She needed to move, needed to get somewhere safe. But where? She had no friends left. The Whitmores had systematically isolated her over the past 10 months, discouraging her from working, from seeing Sophie, from having any life outside their estate. Sophie. God, she needed Sophie. But Sophie had moved to Portland 6 months ago for a job opportunity, and Clara hadn't spoken to her since the awkward, stilted phone call where she pretended everything was fine, too ashamed to admit her marriage was already crumbling. Another contraction seized her, and Clara cried out, doubling over on the bench. Through the pain, she heard a car engine. Her head snapped up. A black SUV was crawling down the street, its headlights cutting through the rain, moving slowly, too slowly, like it was searching for something. Terror flooded her veins. The money. Someone was looking for the money. Clara shoved the bag under her soaked dress, pulling the fabric over it as best she could. She must have looked grotesque. 9 months pregnant had already made her huge, and now with the bag pressed against her belly, she looked like she was carrying triplets. The SUV slowed as it approached the bus stop. Clara kept her head down, trying to look like just another miserable person waiting for public transportation in the rain. Her heart was slamming so hard against her ribs she thought it might break through. The SUV stopped. The passenger window rolled down. Miss, are you all right? Clara looked up slowly. The driver was a woman, probably in her 60s, with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. Beside her in the passenger seat was a man about the same age, concern written across his weathered face. Not the people hunting for millions of dollars. Just good people. Clara's voice broke. I'm in labor. I need to get to a hospital, but I don't have, say no more. The woman was already opening her door. Henry, help her into the back seat. Quickly now. The man, Henry, was beside Clara in seconds, his strong hands gentle as he helped her stand. The bag beneath her dress shifted, and Clara clutched it desperately, praying they wouldn't notice. I'm Ruth, sweetheart. The woman said as Henry guided Clara into the warm, dry interior of their car. Ruth Flanagan, this is my husband Henry. We're going to get you to County General, all right? Just breathe. You're going to be fine. Clara burst into tears. She couldn't help it. After hours of cruelty, of being thrown away like trash, this simple kindness shattered her. Ruth climbed into the back seat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, and Clara sobbed against this stranger's shoulder while Henry drove through the rain-slick streets. There now, Ruth murmured, stroking her wet hair. You're safe. We've got you. What's your name, honey? Clara, she gasped between sobs. Clara Dawson. She used her maiden name without thinking. The name Whitmore felt like poison in her mouth. Where's your husband, Clara? Your family. Gone, Clara whispered. I have no one. Ruth's arm tightened around her. In the rearview mirror, Clara saw Henry's jaw clench. You have us now, Ruth said firmly. At least for tonight. One step at a time. The hospital emergency entrance blazed with fluorescent light. Henry pulled up to the doors and immediately went inside, returning moments later with 2 nurses and a wheelchair. Clara clutched the bag beneath her dress, terror mixing with relief. She needed medical help desperately. Her baby needed it, but how would she explain the enormous bulge that wasn't actually her pregnancy? One of the nurses, a young woman with tired eyes and a no-nonsense expression, took one look at Clara and said, How far apart are the contractions? 2 minutes, Clara gasped. Maybe less. Let's move. Now. They transferred her to the wheelchair, and mercifully, in the chaos of getting her inside, no one seemed to notice the odd shape of her belly. Ruth stayed beside her, holding her hand, while Henry dealt with the administrative desk. I don't have insurance, Clara tried to say. I can't pay. We'll figure it out, Ruth said. Right now, you focus on bringing that baby safely into the world. They wheeled her into a triage room. The nurse, her name tag read Kelly Malone, helped Clara onto the examination table and reached for the hem of her dress. Let's check how dilated you are, Kelly said. Clara's hands flew to the bag hidden beneath the fabric. Wait, can I have a moment? Please. Kelly paused, studying her. There was something sharp in her gaze, something that saw more than Clara wanted to reveal. You in trouble? Kelly asked quietly. Clara's throat closed. She managed a tiny nod. Kelly glanced toward the door, then back at Clara. The running from someone kind of trouble, or the someone's hurting you kind of trouble? Both, Clara whispered. Maybe. I don't know anymore. The nurse's expression softened slightly. All right, I'm going to step out for 2 minutes to get the attending physician. Whatever you need to hide it now. There's a locker behind that curtain. Code is your birth month and day for digits. Nothing in there but spare blankets. Understand? Clara stared at this stranger, offering her an unexpected lifeline. Why are you helping me? Kelly's smile was sad. Because I've been where you are. Different circumstances, same desperation. 2 minutes, Clara. Make them count. The moment Kelly left, Clara struggled off the table, pulled the bag from beneath her dress, and shoved it into the locker. October 15th, 1015. She punched in the code with shaking fingers, heard the lock click, and barely made it back to the examination table before Kelly returned with the doctor. The next 3 hours were a blur of pain and fear and exhaustion. Ruth stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, being the mother Clara no longer had. At 11:47 p.m., Clara gave birth to a daughter. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. 4 weeks early but breathing on her own, crying with healthy lungs, perfect in every way. The nurse placed the baby on Clara's chest, and Clara looked down at the tiny, furious, beautiful face of her daughter and felt something fierce and primal lock into place inside her chest. "Hi," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama, and I promise, no one is ever going to hurt you. No one is ever going to throw you away. I will protect you with everything I have." The baby's crying softened, her unfocused eyes seeming to search for Clara's face. "She needs a name," Ruth said softly, wiping her own eyes. Clara thought of her mother, of the years of struggle and sacrifice, of the love that had sustained her through everything. "Grace," she said. "Her name is Grace." What Clara didn't know, what she couldn't know as she cradled her newborn daughter and made impossible promises, was that at that exact moment, 3 men in expensive suits were reviewing security footage from every bus stop in a 6-mile radius. They were looking for a black leather bag, and they were very, very good at finding things that didn't want to be found. In another part of the city, in the penthouse suite of the Whitmore estate, Daniel Whitmore was having his own revelation. He'd gone to Clara's old room, the servants' quarters where they'd banished her, looking for some legal documents he needed her to sign. Divorce papers. Vanessa wanted to marry by Christmas. But when he opened the small desk drawer, he found letters instead. Letters from doctors. Bills from the fertility clinic. Medical records. He read them twice, his hand shaking. Clara hadn't trapped him with a pregnancy. She'd been told by 3 different specialists that she was infertile. The baby, his daughter, had been a miracle, an impossibility, and he'd thrown them both away because Vanessa had whispered poison in his ear and his mother had threatened to cut him off. Daniel sat on the narrow bed in the cold little room where his pregnant wife had slept alone for months, surrounded by evidence of her desperation to give him the family he'd said he wanted, and realized he'd made a terrible mistake. But by then, Clara was already gone, and the real danger was just beginning. Clara was discharged 36 hours after giving birth. It was faster than normal, but Kelly the nurse had pulled some strings, falsifying paperwork that said Clara had family support at home. The truth was that Clara had nowhere to go, and Kelly seemed to understand that staying in the hospital system meant more questions Clara couldn't answer. Ruth and Henry had stayed. Through that first terrifying night when Grace wouldn't stop crying, through the next morning when a social worker came by asking pointed questions about Clara's living situation, through the afternoon when Clara sat in the hospital bed, holding her daughter and trying not to have a complete breakdown. "You'll come home with us," Ruth announced as Clara was being cleared to leave. "Just until you get on your feet. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling." Ruth's voice had that gentle steel that reminded Clara painfully of her own mother. "We have a guest room. It's small, but it's clean and warm. You and Grace need somewhere safe." Clara looked down at her sleeping daughter, then at the locker behind the curtain where $10 million in cash was hidden. She thought about the black SUV that had been searching the streets, about the danger she was bringing to these kind people's doorstep. "You've already done so much," Clara said carefully. "I don't want to be a burden." Henry, who'd been quiet most of the time, spoke up from his chair by the window. "Our daughter would have been about your age," he said. "She died in a car accident 8 years ago. She was pregnant. We never got to meet our grandchild." Ruth's hand found Henry's, their fingers intertwining with the unconscious ease of 40 years together. "So you see," Ruth continued, her voice thick, "you wouldn't be a burden, sweetheart. You'd be a blessing." Clara's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to accept, wanted so desperately to let someone take care of her for once. But the money changed everything. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Maybe can you give me an hour?" Ruth looked like she wanted to argue, but Henry squeezed her hand. "We'll be in the cafeteria," he said. "Take your time." The moment they left, Clara retrieved the bag from the locker. Her hand shook as she opened it, staring at the fortune inside. She needed to know exactly what she was dealing with. It took her 20 minutes to count. She had to stop several times when Grace fussed or when someone walked past the room. But finally, she had a number. $10,200,000. Clara sat back, her head spinning. This wasn't drug money or gambling cash. This was serious money. Organized crime money. The kind of money that people killed for. She pulled out her phone. The cheap prepaid one Kelly had bought her from the hospital gift shop, paid for with the last of Thomas's $23, and searched the news. It didn't take long to find the story. Federal armored truck robbery. $10 million, still missing. Clara's blood ran cold as she read. 3 days ago, An armored truck carrying cash to be destroyed by the Federal Reserve had been hijacked on the interstate. The guards had been killed. The truck had been found abandoned, and $10 million had vanished. The FBI was investigating. The news report mentioned possible links to the Castellano crime family. Clara knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name. Vincent Castellano had been on trial for racketeering 2 years ago. He'd walked free on a technicality, but the rumors persisted. Drugs, extortion, murder. And now Clara was sitting in a hospital room with his $10 million and a newborn baby. She looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside the bed. At her tiny fingers curled into fists, her rosebud mouth, her absolute helpless innocence. Clara had 3 choices. She could turn the money in to the police, do the right thing, the safe thing, and walk away with nothing, back to the streets, back to trying to figure out how to feed her daughter with no money, no job, no home. She could keep it and run, take Grace and disappear, change their names, start over somewhere far away. But how far would $10 million in stolen cash get her before someone found them? Before the Castellanos or the FBI or whoever else was looking to track them down? Or she could keep it and stay, use it carefully, build a life for Grace in the shadows, always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. All 3 options were terrifying. All 3 could get her daughter killed. Clara was still wrestling with the decision when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but some instinct made her swipe to accept. Clara. The voice on the other end was male, familiar, and made her stomach drop. Clara, it's Daniel. Please don't hang up. Her finger hovered over the end call button. How did you get this number? I've been looking for you. I called every hospital in the city. I told them I was your husband and there was a family emergency. County General finally told me you've been discharged, but a nurse felt sorry for me and gave me this number. Clara, please. I need to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. I made a mistake. Daniel's voice cracked. A terrible mistake. I found the letters from the fertility doctors. I know the baby, our baby, I know she's a miracle. I know I threw away everything that mattered and she. Clara interrupted, her voice cold. Your daughter is a she. Her name is Grace. And you threw us both away because your mistress wanted you to. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, I know, and I'm so sorry. My mother, she convinced me that you were. Clara, I was weak and stupid, and I let them poison me against you. But I want to make it right. Please, come home. Let me see my daughter. Let me take care of you both. Clara laughed, and it sounded harsh even to her own ears. Come home? To the mansion where your mother slapped me while I was in labor? Where Vanessa wore my bathrobe and called you Danny? That home? Vanessa's gone. I ended it. And my mother, I've set boundaries. It'll be different. I promise. Your promises mean nothing to me anymore. Clara, please. She hung up. Her hands were shaking again. Part of her, the part that was exhausted and scared and desperate for someone to make all of this easier, wanted to believe him. Wanted to go back to the mansion, let Daniel support them, pretend the last few days had been a nightmare. But she'd seen his face when his mother threw her out. She'd seen him kiss Vanessa while Clara begged for help. And more importantly, she now had $10 million in cash. If she went back to the Whitmores, how long before they discovered it? How long before Daniel's greed, or his mother's, turned Clara from a wife into a liability? No, going back was not an option. Grace started crying, her hungry wail filling the small room. Clara lifted her daughter, positioned her to nurse, and felt the familiar tug as Grace latched on. It's just you and me, baby girl, Clara whispered. And I'm going to keep us safe. I promise. She made her decision. She would keep the money. She would stay in the city. But she wouldn't stay with Ruth and Henry. She couldn't risk bringing danger to their door. Instead, she would find a cheap apartment in a part of town where people minded their own business. She would use the cash sparingly, carefully, in amounts small enough not to draw attention. And she would build a life for Grace, one quiet dollar at a time. It wasn't a good plan, but it was a plan. Clara was packing the few items the hospital had given her, diapers, a blanket, some formula samples, when Kelly knocked and entered. You've got visitors, the nurse said, her expression odd. They say they're from Child Protective Services. Clara's blood turned to ice. What? A call came in expressing concern about a newborn being discharged to an unstable living situation. They want to do a wellness check before you leave. Kelly's eyes flicked meaningfully to the bag, then back to Clara. Someone had called CPS. Someone who wanted to separate Clara from her daughter. Someone who wanted her vulnerable and alone. Through the small window in the door, Clara could see two people in the hallway. A woman in a blazer with an official-looking badge. And beside her, a man in an expensive suit who definitely was not a social worker. The man turned, and Clara got a clear look at his face. Hard, cold, scarred along the jaw. That was not CPS. The stairwell at the end of the hall leads to a side exit, Kelly said quietly, not looking at Clara. I'm gonna go tell them you're in the bathroom, and it might be a few minutes. If you're gonna do something stupid like run, now would be the time. Clara stared at the nurse. Why are you helping me? Kelly's smile was sad. Because whatever you're running from, it's worse than whatever you're running to. I can see it in your eyes. So run, honey, and don't look back. Clara grabbed the bag, grabbed her daughter, and ran. The stairwell was empty. Her body screamed in protest. She was 36 hours postpartum, exhausted, still bleeding. But terror was a powerful anesthetic. She made it down 3 flights, through the side exit, and into the parking lot before she heard shouting behind her. They discovered she was gone. Clara clutched Grace to her chest and ran toward the street. She had no plan, no destination, just the primal need to get away, to protect her baby, to survive. A car pulled up beside her. Ruth's car. The passenger window rolled down. Henry leaned over from the driver's seat. Get in. Now. Clara didn't hesitate. She dove into the back seat, and Henry was already accelerating before she closed the door. We saw them arrive, Ruth said from the front seat, turn around to look at Clara. Those weren't social workers. We've been around long enough to recognize thugs when we see them. I'm sorry, Clara gasped, buckling Grace's carrier in with shaking hands. I'm so sorry. I should never have dragged you into this. What's in the bag, Clara? Henry asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes in the rearview mirror were serious. Clara looked at Ruth and Henry, these strangers who'd shown her nothing but kindness, who were now accessories to whatever crime she was committing, who deserved the truth. $10 million, she whispered. I found $10 million in stolen cash, and the people who want it back are willing to kill for it. The car swerved slightly before Henry regained control. Ruth turned to face forward, silent for a long moment. Then she said, well, that's going to complicate things. Despite everything, Clara almost laughed. I can get out. Just drop me anywhere. You don't need to be involved in this. Too late for that, Henry said. They saw us pick you up, which means we're involved whether we like it or not. So here's what we're going to do. Ruth continued, her voice taking on that steel-laced gentleness again. We're going to go to our house. We're going to have some tea, and we're going to figure out how to keep you and that baby alive. And then, if you're very lucky, we're going to help you turn this disaster into something good. Clara looked down at Grace, who had somehow slept through the entire escape, at the bag of blood money at her feet, at the 2 elderly strangers who'd appointed themselves her protectors. Why, she asked. Why would you risk yourself for me? Henry met her eyes in the mirror. Because a long time ago, our daughter needed help and no one came. We don't make that mistake twice. As they drove through the city, heading toward a destination Clara didn't know, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She answered without thinking. Heavy breathing, then a voice low and rough. You have something that belongs to me. Clara's heart stopped. I don't know what you're talking about. The black bag. I know you have it. And I know you have a newborn baby. That's quite a responsibility for a woman with no home, no money, no husband. It would be a shame if something happened to that child. Don't you dare bring me my money and you and your daughter live. Keep running, and I'll find you anyway. But I won't be so generous when I do. He paused. You have 48 hours. I'll be in touch with instructions. The line went dead. Clara sat frozen, her daughter in her arms, her whole body trembling. Clara. Ruth's voice seemed to come from very far away. Clara, what is it? They know, Clara whispered. They know about Grace. And they've given me 2 days to return the money, or they'll kill us both. Ruth and Henry's house was nothing like the Whitmore estate. It was a small craftsman bungalow in a quiet neighborhood where trees lined the streets and people still sat on their porches in the evenings. The paint was faded but well-maintained, the garden modest but loved. Inside, Everything was worn and comfortable, filled with photographs and memories, and the kind of warmth that only comes from decades of genuine happiness. Clara sat at their kitchen table, Grace asleep in her arms, and felt like she'd stepped into someone else's life. "Drink this," Ruth said, placing a cup of chamomile tea in front of her. "You're still shaking." Clara was. She couldn't seem to stop. The voice on the phone kept echoing in her head. That cold promise of violence. The threat against Grace. Henry was at the kitchen counter, his laptop open, searching for something. His face was grim. "The armored truck robbery was tied to the Castellano family," he said, not looking up from the screen. "Federal investigators believe it was an inside job. One of the guards survived long enough to say the hijackers knew exactly when and where to strike. So we're dealing with a mob," Ruth said calmly, like she was discussing the weather. She sat down across from Clara. "That complicates things." "That's an understatement," Clara said, her voice hollow. "I should just give them the money back. That's the smart thing to do. Give it back and disappear before they kill you anyway." Henry interrupted, finally looking up. "Clara, you're a witness now. You've seen the money. You know it exists. The moment you hand it over, you become a liability." Clara's arms tightened around Grace. "So what am I supposed to do? Keep it? They'll hunt me forever." "Maybe not forever," Ruth said thoughtfully. "Henry, what did that article say about the FBI investigation?" "They're close to making arrests. Several members of the Castellano organization are under surveillance. The leading theory is that someone in the family is cooperating with the feds." Henry scrolled through the article. "If the arrests happen, the power structure collapses. The money becomes less important than survival." "How long until these arrests happen?" Clara asked. "Could be days. Could be weeks. I have 48 hours. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Grace stirred in Clara's arms, making small, snuffling sounds. Clara looked down at her daughter's face and felt that fierce protectiveness surge through her again. She'd been helpless when the Whitmores threw her out. Helpless when Daniel chose Vanessa over her. Helpless her entire life, always at the mercy of other people's decisions. But now she had $10 million, and that changed everything. "What if I didn't give it back?" Clara said slowly. "What if I used it against them instead?" Ruth's eyebrows rose. "What do you mean?" "The money is evidence, right? Evidence of a robbery. Evidence that could put these people away." Clara's mind was racing now, pieces clicking together. "What if I made a deal? With the FBI? Give them the money in exchange for protection? Witness protection?" Henry was already shaking his head. "The moment you contact the FBI, they'll take the money and you'll disappear into the system. Witness protection means giving up your entire life. New identity, new city, no contact with anyone from your past. And there's no guarantee they'd even offer it. You're not a witness to the crime itself. You just found the money. Plus," Ruth added gently, "witness protection takes time to arrange. You don't have time." Clara slumped in her chair, defeat washing over her. Every option led to the same place. Danger, loss, running forever. Her phone buzzed. She jumped, nearly waking Grace. It was a text from Daniel. "Please, Clara, just tell me you and the baby are safe. I am worried sick." Before she could respond, another text came through. A mother told me what really happened. How she hit you. How she threw you out while you were in labor. I'll never forgive her. Or myself. Then, I hired a private investigator to find you. I need to know you're okay." Clara's jaw clenched. A private investigator. That was the last thing she needed. She typed back. "Stop looking for me. Stop calling. We're fine. You made your choice." The response came immediately. "I choose you. I choose Grace. Please come home." Clara turned off her phone. "Trouble?" Ruth asked. "My husband. Ex-husband. Whatever he is." Clara rubbed her eyes. "He suddenly wants to make amends. Found out the baby was a miracle, and now he's having regrets. Do you want to go back to him?" Ruth's tone was carefully neutral. Did she? A week ago, Clara would have said yes without hesitation. Would have crawled back to Daniel, grateful for any scrap of love he'd throw her way. But that woman had died on the steps of the Whitmore estate. The woman sitting here now had seen exactly how much Daniel's love was worth. "No," Clara said firmly. "I don't. Even if none of this money business was happening, I wouldn't go back. He showed me who he really is." Ruth reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Good girl. Henry closed his laptop. I think we need to consider that there might be more than one party looking for this money. What do you mean? The Castellanos want it back, obviously, but the FBI wants it for evidence. And if the robbery was an inside job like they're saying, that means someone in the Castellano organization might be trying to recover it before their bosses find out they lost it. He ticked off on his fingers. 3 different groups, 3 different motivations. The question is, which one found you at the hospital? Clara thought about the man in the expensive suit, the fake CPS worker, the voice on the phone. Does it matter? She asked. They all want the same thing. It matters if we're going to outmaneuver them, Ruth said. Different groups have different weaknesses. Clara stared at this elderly woman who was talking about outmaneuvering the mob like it was a chess game. Who are you people? Ruth and Henry exchanged a look. Something passed between them, a silent conversation that spoke of secrets and shared history. Before I retired, Henry said carefully, I was an investigative journalist. I spent 30 years exposing corruption in this city. Made a lot of enemies. Ruth worked as a defense attorney. I represented people the system had failed, Ruth added. People who couldn't afford fancy lawyers. People who'd been framed or coerced or simply ground down by poverty and injustice. Clara looked between them with new understanding. So you've dealt with people like this before. Worse than this, Henry confirmed. And we're still here. Grace started crying, her face scrunching up in that way that meant she was hungry again. Clara adjusted her shirt to nurse, too exhausted to be modest. Ruth stood and draped a light blanket over Clara's shoulder, giving her privacy without making her feel ashamed. The way I see it, Ruth said, returning to her seat, you have one advantage these people don't expect. What's that? They think you're helpless. A desperate single mother with no resources and no options. They're expecting you to fold. I am helpless, Clara said bitterly. I have a newborn baby and people with guns want me dead. That's pretty much the definition of helpless. You have $10 million, Henry countered. That's the opposite of helpless. That's power. The question is whether you're brave enough to use it. Clara looked down at Grace, nursing peacefully, oblivious to the danger surrounding them. She thought about her mother, who'd fought cancer for 6 years with a grace and strength Clara had never fully appreciated, who'd worked until she physically couldn't anymore, who'd never complained, who'd faced death without flinching. You're stronger than you think you are, her mother had told her near the end. You just haven't had a reason to find out how strong yet. Maybe now was that reason. What would using it look like? Clara asked. Ruth smiled. Now you're asking the right questions. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Henry made phone calls to old contacts, journalists and lawyers, and people who existed in the gray spaces between legal and not. Ruth went through the bag of money with a methodical eye, examining the bills, the bands, looking for anything that might give them leverage. These serial numbers are sequential, Ruth said, laying out several stacks on the table. That makes them traceable. If you try to deposit this in a bank, it will be flagged immediately. So I can't use it. I didn't say that. You just have to be smart about it. Small amounts, different locations, money orders, prepaid cards, cash transactions under $10,000. It's tedious, but possible. Clara's mind was spinning. But that takes time. Time I don't have. Which is why we need to buy you time, Henry said, hanging up from another call. I have a friend who owes me a favor. He's a private investigator, very discreet. He's going to put out feelers, try to identify who's after you. Once we know who we're dealing with, we can make a plan. In the meantime, Ruth continued, you stay here. You keep your head down. You take care of that baby. And you let us handle the dangerous part. I can't ask you to. You're not asking, Ruth said firmly. We're offering. There's a difference. Clara felt tears prickling her eyes again. She seemed to cry at everything these days. Hormones, probably. Or trauma. Or just the overwhelming relief of not being alone anymore. I don't understand why you're doing this, she whispered. You don't even know me. Henry's expression softened. Our daughter's name was Emma. She was 26 when she died, pregnant with her first child. A drunk driver ran a red light. He paused, his voice thick. We spent years being angry. Angry at the driver, at God, at ourselves for not being there. And then one day Ruth said something that changed everything. Ruth picked up the story. I said that we couldn't bring Emma back, but we could honor her by being the kind of people who showed up for others the way we wish someone had shown up for her. So you see, Henry finished, You're not a burden, Clara. You're an opportunity. A chance to make meaning out of loss. Grace had fallen asleep, milk-drunk and peaceful. Clara held her daughter close and let herself imagine, just for a moment, that this could work. That she could outsmart the people hunting her. That she could build a life for Grace using stolen money and borrowed time and the kindness of strangers who become something more. It was a ridiculous fantasy. Impossible. Dangerous. But it was the only hope she had. Her phone buzzed again. She turned it back on to wait for Henry's investigator friend to call. But this wasn't a call. It was another text from an unknown number. She opened it. It was a photo of Ruth and Henry's house, taken from across the street. The message below it read, "Tick-tock, Clara, 46 hours left. And now I know where you're hiding." Clara stared at the photo of Ruth and Henry's house on her phone screen. Her hand had gone numb. "They found us," she whispered. Henry moved to the window, careful not to disturb the curtain. "I don't see anyone out there now. Doesn't mean they're not watching." Ruth took the phone from Clara's trembling fingers and studied the image. This was taken in daylight, at least 2 hours ago, judging by the sun position, which means they've known where you are for a while. "Then why haven't they come in?" Clara asked. "Why just send a photo?" "Because they're playing with you," Henry said grimly. "They want you scared, want you to make a mistake." Clara looked down at Grace, still sleeping peacefully in her arms. "We need to leave. Now. I'm putting you both in danger just by being here." "And go where?" Ruth challenged. "You leave now, scared and desperate. You're exactly what they're expecting. Easy to follow, easy to corner." "She's right," Henry said. "We change locations now. We're just rats in a maze running where they want us to run." Clara's phone rang. She nearly dropped it. Unknown number. Again. "Don't answer it," Henry started to say, but Clara was already swiping to accept. She was tired of being prey, tired of running. If they were going to threaten her, she wanted to hear it directly. "What do you want?" she demanded. But the voice on the other end wasn't the rough male voice from before. This was different, smoother, educated. "Mrs. Whitmore, or should I say Ms. Dawson, I understand you've reclaimed your maiden name." Clara's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who can help you. But we need to meet. In person. Alone." "I'm not meeting anyone alone. Even if I can tell you the truth about that money you found, about why it was left at that specific bus stop, about who really put it there." Clara's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "The robbery wasn't random, Ms. Dawson, and you finding that bag wasn't an accident. You were chosen, specifically, by someone who knew exactly what your in-laws did to you." The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. No one knew where I was. I didn't even know where I was. But someone knew the route you'd take from the Whitmore estate, knew which bus stop you'd end up at, knew you'd be desperate enough to look under that bench when you sat down." The voice paused. "Someone who's been watching you for a very long time." "You're lying." "Am I?" "Then explain how the money was hidden at the exact location where a pregnant woman with no resources, thrown out in the rain, would end up. That's quite a coincidence, don't you think?" Clara's mind raced. The bus stop had been 4 blocks from the estate. Thomas, the security guard, had told her to go there, had said it was the closest stop, but there must have been other options, other directions she could have walked, unless someone had known she'd go that way. "What do you want?" she asked again. "To meet." 1 hour. There's a coffee shop called Morelli's on 5th and Grant. Public place. Lots of witnesses. You bring the baby if it makes you feel safer. I just want to talk. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't. But consider this. If I wanted you dead, would I be calling? Would I be offering information? I just take what I wanted and disappear. The voice softened slightly. "I'm trying to help you, Clara. Whether you believe that or not is up to you. 1 hour. Come alone or don't come at all. But if you want answers, this is your only chance." The line went dead. Clara sat frozen, her mind spinning. "What did they say?" Ruth asked. Clara repeated the conversation, watching their faces grow more concerned with each word. "It's definitely a trap," Henry said immediately. "Classic setup. Get you to a secondary location, grab you and the money." "But what if it's not?" Clara heard herself say. "What if someone really did leave that money for me? What if this whole thing is more complicated than we thought?" "Clara, listen to yourself," Ruth said gently. "You're looking for a fairy godmother in a story full of wolves. That money was from an armored car robbery. People were killed. This isn't some benefactor trying to help you." But something about the phone call had struck a chord deep in Clara's gut. The way the voice had known about the Whitmores, about her being thrown out, About the specific bus stop. I need to understand what's happening, Clara said. I can't keep running from shadows. I need to know who's really after me and why. Then let me go, Henry offered. I'll meet this person, find out what they want. They said I had to come alone. If I send someone else, they might disappear, and we'll never know the truth. Grace started fussing, sensing Clara's agitation. Clara rocked her gently, trying to calm both her daughter and herself. Ruth and Henry exchanged another one of their wordless conversations. If you're going to do this, Ruth finally said, we do it smart. Henry will be nearby. I'll stay here with Grace. I'm not leaving Grace. You said it yourself. Public place, lots of witnesses. Taking a newborn to meet a potential criminal is the opposite of protecting her. Ruth's voice was firm but kind. She'll be safe with me. I promise you that on my daughter's memory. But you need to be able to move fast if things go wrong. You can't do that with a baby in your arms. Every instinct in Clara's body screamed against leaving her daughter. But Ruth was right. If this was a trap, if things went sideways, Grace would be safer here. 1 hour, Clara said. If I'm not back in 1 hour, you take Grace and you run. Take some of the money. Enough to disappear. And you don't look back. Clara, promise me, Clara insisted. Promise me you'll save her if I don't come back. Ruth's eyes were wet. I promise. But you're coming back. Morelli's coffee shop was exactly what the caller had described. Small, busy, filled with students from the nearby college hunched over laptops. Large windows looking out onto a busy street. The kind of place where a scream would be heard, where violence would be immediately noticed. Clara sat at a corner table, her back to the wall, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Henry was across the street at a bus stop, pretending to read a newspaper. They'd worked out a signal. If she took off her jacket, he'd call the police and intervene. She'd been there 10 minutes when someone sat down across from her. Clara's breath stopped. It was a woman, mid-40s, expensively dressed, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. But it was her face that made Clara's world tilt sideways. She looked exactly like the woman in the fake CPS badge at the hospital. You, Clara breathed. Me, the woman agreed. She signaled to the barista, who brought over an espresso without being asked. Clearly irregular. Thank you for coming, Clara. I know you're frightened, but I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Who are you? My name is Nina Corleone. I'm an FBI special agent working organized crime, and the money you found wasn't meant for you. She paused. It was meant for me. Clara's mind went blank. What? Nina pulled out a badge. A real one this time, not fake. FBI credentials with her photo and identification number. 6 months ago, I went undercover in the Castellano organization. Deep cover. My job was to gather evidence for a RICO case that would dismantle their entire operation. She took a sip of her espresso. 3 days ago, someone in the organization discovered who I really was. They were going to kill me, but my handler managed to extract me before they could. What does this have to do with the money? The robbery was my exit strategy. The inside man was one of ours. The plan was to stage the hijacking, make it look like a typical heist, and hide the evidence money at a secure drop location where my team could recover it later. That money represents 6 months of documented transactions. Serial numbers that tie directly to Castellano money laundering operations. It's the key to the entire case. Clara's hands tightened on her cup. The bus. Stop. Was supposed to be secured by my team within 2 hours of the drop. But there was a complication. The Castellanos figure out the money was evidence. They sent people to recover it before we could. Nina leaned forward. You found it in that 90-minute window where no one was watching. The worst possible luck. Or the best, depending on how you look at it. You came to the hospital with a fake social worker. I came to the hospital to verify you actually had the money and to get it back quietly. I didn't want to involve you more than necessary. Didn't want to put you in danger. But you ran before I could explain. Nina's expression was almost apologetic. And then things got complicated. Complicated how? The Castellanos know you have the money. But here's what you don't know. They think you're working with me. They think you're part of the FBI operation, which means they're not trying to recover their money anymore. Nina's voice dropped. They tried to eliminate a federal witness. The coffee shop seemed to fade away. Clara could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. I'm not a witness. I didn't see anything. I just found a bag. They don't know that. And even if you told them, they wouldn't believe you. You're already on their kill list, Clara. You and anyone helping you. Ruth and Henry. God, what had Clara brought to their doorstep? So what do I do? Clara asked, her voice hollow. You give me the money. Tonight. I take it into federal custody. We use it to make our arrests, and I get you into witness protection. New identity, new city, new life. You and your daughter will be safe. It was exactly what Henry had predicted. The FBI solution. Give up everything and disappear. What if I don't want witness protection? Clara asked. What if I want to stay here? Build a life. Then you'll be dead within a week, Nina said bluntly. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. The Castellanos don't forget. They don't forgive. And they have resources you can't imagine. Clara thought of Grace, barely 2 days old, sleeping peacefully at Ruth's house. Of a life she'd imagined building. The security she'd thought $10 million could buy. All of it, smoke and mirrors. How do I know you're really FBI? Clara asked. How do I know this isn't just another lie? Nina pulled out her phone and made a call. Put him on, she said to whoever answered. Then she handed the phone to Clara. Hello. Clara said hesitantly. Ms. Dawson, this is Assistant Director James Fisher with the FBI. I'm Agent Corleone's superior. I want to assure you that everything she's told you is accurate. We have a protection package ready for you and your infant daughter. We just need you to cooperate. Clara's hand shook. The voice sounded official, authoritative, but so had the voice that threatened to kill Grace. I need time to think, she said. You don't have time, Fisher replied. We're moving on the Castellanos tonight. In approximately 8 hours, we're executing arrest warrants on 15 members of the organization. We need that money as evidence before we move. Otherwise, the case falls apart and very dangerous people walk free. 8 hours, Clara repeated numbly. Agent Corleone will coordinate the exchange. Please, Ms. Dawson, do the right thing. Help us put these criminals away. And let us protect you and your child. The line went dead. Nina took her phone back. You have until 10 p.m., Nina said. After that, the arrests happen with or without the evidence. And your protection package expires. You'll be on your own against the Castellanos. Claire stood up on shaking legs. I need to think. Don't think too long, Nina warned. The clock is ticking. Clara walked out of the coffee shop in a daze. Henry fell in a step beside her a block later. Who was that? He asked urgently. FBI, Clara said. At least I think it was FBI. She says the money is evidence. Says I have to turn it over tonight or I'm dead. Do you believe her? Clara realized she had no idea. The badge had looked real. The phone call had sounded real. But after everything she'd been through, she didn't know what real was anymore. They made it back to Ruth's house 20 minutes later. Clara went immediately to Grace, needing to hold her daughter, needing to feel something solid and true in a world that had turned to quicksand. What happened? Ruth demanded. Clara explained everything. Nina Corleone, the FBI, the 8-hour deadline, the witness protection offer. When she finished, Ruth and Henry sat in stunned silence. If she's really FBI, Henry finally said, then cooperating is the smart move. But if she's not, Ruth countered, then Clara just told her exactly where we are and that she still has the money. Clara's phone buzzed. Another text. This one from Daniel. Clara, I need to tell you something important. It's about my family and money. Please call me. It's urgent. Before she could process that, another call came through. The rough voice from before. The original threat. She answered. I know you met with the FBI. The voice said without preamble. I know what they told you. But before you hand over that money, you should know something. What? Your husband, Daniel Whitmore, isn't just a project manager. He's the one who planned the armored car robbery. And his mother, Margaret, is the one who ordered your in-laws to throw you out because she needed you vulnerable and desperate. Everything that's happened to you was orchestrated by the people you trusted most. The phone slipped from Clara's fingers. Ruth caught it before it hit the ground. Clara. Ruth's voice seemed to come from underwater. Clara, what did they say? But Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because if what the voice said was true, then her entire life had been a lie. Her marriage had been a setup. Her suffering had been calculated. And the money she'd found wasn't a miracle. It was a trap that had been set for her from the very beginning. Her phone rang again. Daniel. This time, Clara answered. It's true, isn't it? She said, her voice eerily calm. You set me up. All of it. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly. I can explain. Please, Clara. Let me explain. Explain what? That you married me to use me? That you got me pregnant, and then threw me away as a partisan plan? It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I didn't know my mother was involved with the Castellanos. Didn't know about the money laundering until it was too late. And I didn't know she'd throw you out. I swear, Clara, I didn't know. His voice broke. But I know now. And I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to protect you. By hiring a private investigator to track me down. By making sure everyone knows where I am. I had to find you. I had to warn you. My mother, Clara, she's not who you think she is. She's in deep with organized crime. Has been for years. The Whitmore estate, the business, all of it is built on money laundering and extortion. And when the FBI started closing in, she needed a scapegoat. Someone to take the fall. Clara's vision was tunneling. Me. She needed me. Yes. But it didn't work. The plan fell apart. And now she's desperate. She'll do anything to get that money back, because without it, the FBI has nothing on her. She walks free while everyone else goes to prison. Including you? Including me, Daniel admitted. I'm an accessory. I knew about some of it, and I didn't report it. I was weak and stupid, and I thought I could protect you by keeping you out of it. But all I did was make it worse. Clara looked at Grace, at Ruth and Henry watching her with worried eyes, at the bag of money that had become a noose around all their necks. What do you want from me, Daniel? Don't trust the FBI. The agent who contacted you, Nina Corleone, she's not who she says she is. How do you know about Nina? Because my mother told me. Nina's not FBI. She's Castellano. She's Vincent Castellano's daughter. And she's trying to get the money back before the real FBI finds out it exists. The world stopped. No, Clara Guisperth. She had a badge. She called someone who said he was FBI. It was fake. All of it. Clara, please, you have to believe me. I know I don't deserve your trust. But I'm begging you. Don't give her that money. Don't meet with her. Because if you do, you and Grace will both die. Clara's legs gave out. She sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. 2 stories. Both plausible. Both terrifying. Nina said Daniel was behind the robbery. Daniel said Nina was Castellano and the FBI angle was fake. One of them was lying. And Clara had no way to know which one. Clara made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She called a press conference. Within 3 hours, every major news outlet in the city was gathered outside the federal building. Clara stood at a podium with Grace in her arms, Ruth and Henry flanking her, and told the entire story. The abuse by the Whitmores, finding the money, the threats, Nina Corleone's fake FBI badge, Daniel's confession, and then she did something brilliant. She kept one stack of bills from the bag and had Ruth's lawyer friend analyze them. The serial numbers traced directly to accounts belonging to Margaret Whitmore, not the Castellanos. Margaret herself. The robbery had been Margaret's plan all along. She'd been embezzling from the Castellano organization for years, and when they discovered it, she'd staged the armored truck heist to make it look like the family's money had been stolen rather than admit she'd been stealing. She planned to frame Clara, have her found with the money, and eliminate both the evidence and the scapegoat in one move. But Clara had gone public first. By the time Margaret's lawyers could respond, the real FBI had already raided the Whitmore estate. They found evidence of money laundering, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. Margaret was arrested on live television, screaming about how Clara had ruined everything. Daniel was arrested too, but his cooperation with investigators earned him a reduced sentence. He signed away all parental rights to Grace without being asked. Nina Corleone was indeed Vincent Castellano's daughter, and she disappeared before authorities could find her. The money was seized as evidence, but Clara received a substantial reward from the federal government for her cooperation. Enough to start over. Enough to build the life she'd always wanted. 6 months later, Clara stood in the nursery of her modest but comfortable apartment, watching Grace sleep. She'd enrolled in nursing school, determined to finish the degree she'd abandoned to care for her mother. Ruth and Henry babysat 3 days a week and had become the grandparents Grace would never have otherwise. Clara had been broken, abandoned, and hunted, but she'd survived. More than that, she'd won. She looked at her daughter and smiled. We made it, baby girl, and we did it our way. The woman who'd been thrown out in the rain was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't cruelty. It was building a beautiful life from the ashes of someone else's wickedness. And that was exactly what Clara intended to do. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of courage, justice, and triumph. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done with that bag of money. Your support keeps these stories coming. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next amazing journey.